Okay, hi, I'm Peter and I'm here with Daniel, Luke and Stephen. As you know from chatting to us inside, we're looking at urban farming. So our main proposition here is we'd like to have an urban farm started on the roof of the arts block here in Trinity. And so we'd appreciate any feedback or expertise you could give about this topic after the talk. We'll just be looking at how we decided on this idea, how we gathered information on it, what we've done so far, and lastly, Luke will be looking at how we're going to take this into the future. So, urban farming, just for anyone who doesn't know, it's very simple. It's just farming in an urban environment. As an example here, we have the farm shop from London. And so they've used an abandoned storefront, and they have a polytunnel, and it's what they don't just want to supply food to people, they also just want to prove that it's sustainable to be able to grow food in an urban environment for London or cities overall. Looking here, yeah. So why we chose urban farming, just with the growing urbanization, it's just very important, we feel, for urban farming to exist as a facility for people to engage with their food more. And with growing populations, there's going to be less space to grow food. So urban farming allows urban farming just gives an opportunity to have more. There's tons of space within cities that we can use, bring negative grey areas, make them green, and just have more engagement with food. So we hope that our project will be able to gain a bit more interest in urban farming in Dublin, as there are a couple of projects, a couple of very good projects as well, but it's still a small number. Some of the projects we were inspired by, we have there was a project on the chocolate factory in Dublin, and that just proved you could have a sustainable urban farm. They managed to go as a pilot project for about 24 months. And then also we were inspired by the Belvedere farm up in Belvedere School. At the moment, they have just a classroom with a glass ceiling, and it's more used as an educational facility, and they're branching out, hoping to have a rooftop farm as well there in Belvedere. So we're both inspired by these, and we decided a rooftop farm would be the best way to go for the facilities that we have here in Trinity. So I'll pass you on to Stephen now, just to show how we narrowed our idea down and developed it. Thank you.
So our ultimate goal is to have a full-scale urban farm on the roof of Trinity's arts block, but this obviously wasn't possible within the constraints of the module. So we had to look to, well, first of all, we had to plan out how this would look in the future. So we chose the arts block roof because we think it's underutilized at the moment. It's just quite grey and concretey, there's not much there. So the arts block was originally modelled after the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and it was intended to have greenery on it when it was built. But ultimately, due to engineering issues, this didn't happen. But we think that our ideas can push it forward to make this actually be realised at last. So we had 3 different models for how this would look. We had first an educational facility for botany students and gardening enthusiasts. Secondly, a recreational space for students to go up and have lunch and just kind of enjoy the atmosphere. And the third was a growing space, which would be very practical and just produce consumables for either interested parties to grow their own and then consume their own, or for college facilities such as the catering staff to use it in some menu items. So as you saw on the previous slide, the arts block is very nicely divided into 3 sections, so these ideas aren't mutually exclusive, and we investigated all 3. But in order to bring the entire project forward, we needed 2 things. We needed interest from the public, and we needed data. So we designed surveys. You can see there a first draft and a final draft. So the purpose of the surveys was to find out how much time people would be willing to put into this if it were to go ahead, and also to find out whether they would be interested in the first place. But having a survey just distributed over the internet or in person is quite dry. So in order to engage the public and generate interest at the same time as gathering data, we had a parking day, which is a kind of a guerrilla gardening depaving thing that was originally thought of in the US, where we took over a space and made it green for the day. So Dan will talk you through what happened when we did that.
That's right. If we just want to get that time lapse started. So I'm going to run you through what we did on the day itself. We're poor students, so we don't actually have any money to do these kind of things. So we're very thankful to the Science Gallery, from whom we borrowed tables, chairs. We got plants donated from Stephen and Andrew at the Belvedere Farm, and also loads of plants by Greg at the Beach Vista Garden Centre, as well as Peter's dad, who's very kind and brought in loads of gardening equipment, including that lovely fence you can see at the bottom there. So big thank you to all of those guys for helping us out. We were then set up about 10 a.m. And ready to get the day started. We decided to have a poster out on the table so people could doodle, write their ideas, jot down thoughts, whatever it may be. You may have seen the poster out during the poster session. But as well as the actual garden space that we took over, we wanted to have a mobile element as well. So this mobile element, it was designed for two main reasons. The first was being so that we could reach out to students, and not just those who were in front of the Berkeley Library, which are mostly art students, but to reach out to the other end of campus, so towards the science end as well. The second reason is that we were slightly worried we might get shut down by college security. It turned out, though, that the day was a massive success. College security passed by, didn't shut us down. Other people who passed by were the head librarian, the head of groundskeeping, representatives from the SU, and most importantly, students, all of whom were extremely supportive. At the end of the day, about 3 p.m., we started to wrap up. I think it's pretty safe to say that we really enjoyed the day, and we hope that all our visitors did as well. But the reason we held the day was to get feedback from the students. And so now I'm going to go into the fun bit, stats. So we got 139 responses to our survey. Out of those 139, there were 2 who didn't want a green space on campus. Don't ask me why. There are about 130 who would support the creation of a rooftop garden, 94 an urban farm, and 50 an educational facility. We also asked them how long they'd spend in this space, and they answered that on average they'd spend 3 hours a week. This really shows that there is a need and a want for this kind of space on campus. Now, a big issue for us was sustainability, because a lot of projects in the past have failed because there was no long-term commitment. So we also asked students if they would be interested in, helping out, maintaining, volunteering for the space. It turns out that over half of them would, and collectively, they would give over 150 hours a week. Yeah, that's a week volunteering. Now, that's not a very realistic number. As we've heard from the ground supervisor, who's now our expert on the matter, he's seen, in his time, 2 different Grow It Yourself projects, Rise and Fall. And we think that's a real shame. And so in order to solve this, I'll hand you over to Luke, who's going to give us some kind of long-term solutions.
So as both Stephen and Dan were talking about kind of keeping this project going after we've passed on from the ITL course is something we really wanted to look at. Passed on from the ITL course and from college in general. So we kind of put together a timeline because it wasn't feasible to do our project, or the project we originally wanted to do within the constraints of the module. We spent a lot of time looking forward at what we might do in the future. So we kind of divided this up into short-term, medium-term and long-term. So next week we're planning to meet with Andrew Douglas. Andrew Douglas is kind of the Dublin-based resident expert in rooftop gardening. So we're looking forward to meeting with him. I'll come back to him just in a second. Next month, following discussions with him about what might be feasible in relation to this project, we want to pitch our idea to Trinity authorities. And then following kind of working with both that group and Andrew, we want next year to look at start growing. Now, we fully appreciate that the project we end up with next year might be something completely different to what we're pitching this evening, because we are well aware that we need to take on suggestions from people who are experts. Like, a lot of that happened with us on Friday, in that the grounds experts kind of countered our positive survey in saying that 2 movements had happened before, and yet there's none still existing today. So they're things we want to look at in the future. So as Dan was saying, one of the main problems again is kind of the continuation of this project following into the future, because things based around urban farming in Trinity don't seem to last particularly long. Students are fickle. Other initiatives that have failed. TUG is different though. Trinity Urban's Gardens, we hope to be different in that we're going to actively ask for outside help. So this is where Andrew Douglas comes in. From what we saw, the Belvedere Farm, which is a farm on the rooftop of Belvedere Secondary School in town, and who kindly lent us the microgreens that you saw both on the slides detailing the parking day and here in front of you. He seems to have struck the perfect balance between kind of constant management, moving from student to student, but also student involvement, so that students can get involved while they're in college, while they want to be and they have the time, but also there's someone there to kind of hands on the reins long term and to kind of give a direction to it. So we are really looking forward to chatting to him next week. We do hope to continue this project beyond the constraints of the ITL module. Finally, we just wanted to say as a group, we really did enjoy this project. We got a lot out of it. And despite not being able to run with our original project, what we did get to do within the constraints of the module has really advanced our understanding and our ability to achieve this in the future. Thank you.